What's up, YouTube? How you doing, YouTube? Bam, and welcome to another episode of Wolf King's Vids. All right, so we got Craig Lincowski. He's some Christian theist dude, and he's gonna ask some questions about the atheist naturalist philosophy. So, got that up here. All right.
So at the end of this video, there'll be a few questions that are going to basically be asking the atheist, and I'm speaking about a naturalist, materialist atheist, asking them to prove their faith. Okay, but before we get there, I want to talk about that. Now, I've been told many times here on YouTube and elsewhere that faith, referring to my faith as a Christian, is a great cop-out.
Cop out.
That faith and reason are somehow diametrically opposed to one another. And that atheists don't have faith, they merely lack a faith in God. But what we're going to find out is that they do have faith, and although they say assume nothing, they have faith in what is called philosophical naturalism, which basically says nature is all that there is. Something that you cannot prove.
Well, let's make that. Let's make this a little bit clear. Atheism deals with non-belief, so that would be the negative of the things that you don't believe. Philosophical naturalism is an entire worldview. It encompasses more than just atheism or skepticism. It is, as he said, the statement that the natural world is all there is. There's a single natural world understood by science, and that's the worldview you go with. So yeah, it's a more semantic term, but yeah, naturalism takes on much more than just atheism. So there you go.
Right? And I've brought this up in times past, and many times, I guess to avoid having a belief system, they will say, "No, you're talking about philosophical naturalism. I used to say only the word naturalism," and I'd say, "No, that's philosophical naturalism. I adhere to methodological naturalism." Now, what is methodological naturalism? Rational Wiki says that methodological naturalism is the label for the required assumption of philosophical naturalism when working with the scientific method. Methodological naturalists limit their scientific research to the study of natural causes because any attempts to define causal relationships with the supernatural are never fruitful and result in the creation of scientific dead ends and God of the gap type hypotheses. To avoid these traps, scientists assume that all causes are empirical and naturalistic, which means they can be measured, quantified, and studied methodically. So with methodological naturalism,
Correct. That's pretty damn good. Not bad. He's learning something.
you're allowing only natural causation in your scientific inquiry, in your investigations. And that's fine when you're working in the lab. I mean, when I was getting my chemistry degree, I was not trying to think of possible supernatural causes for the compound that I had just made in a test tube, right? Or when it comes to coming up with prescription drugs. I mean, natural causation, methodological naturalism, that's fine. But here is where methodological naturalism merges with philosophical naturalism. It is when a person is employing methodological naturalism to find all truth, to find ultimate truth. When you do that, you're assuming that all truth is natural or naturally caused.
Okay. Well, personally, I don't know what the hell you mean by ultimate truth. I mean, science, at least as a working model with regard to naturalism, it's usually just looking for explanations that are consistent, coherent, and predictable. You know, these are the things that it builds on with empirical evidence and tests that measure the accuracy of this evidence. That's usually how it builds on knowledge. with working scientific theories, having the best available evidence to them to best explain the processes of the natural world we live in. The ultimate truth that seems kind of contradictory. I mean, if we had such a thing as ultimate truth, we wouldn't have science. So, scientific naturalism is just promoted for successful scientific investigation, figuring out constantly how this giant universe works. So I don't know what you mean on that.
Therefore, assuming that nature is all that there is, there's that word again, assuming, and you have a believer. This is where science meets up with religiosity. This is where their so-called reason meets with faith. And so within science, where you have all sorts of gaps, they fill it in with naturalistic assumptions. When it comes to ages of rocks and age of the universe and interpretation of the fossil record, and all sorts of other things where they're trying to seek after where everything came from, the origin of all things and the origin of man, etc., all sorts of assumptions are made. So it is true with uniformitarianism versus catastrophism. And so these conclusions that they come up with, that are called fact so many times, are actually facts out in nature mingled with assumptions that are fueled by this faith in philosophical naturalism. We all have the same evidence, and all of us reason beyond that evidence to something ultimate.
Okay, no.
Uncaused.
That is a bunch of bullshit. Okay, so let's unpack a lot of what he said. For the most part, pretty much when it comes to the understanding that the scientific method works as a good model, I mean that's pretty much obvious. Models with predictive power are of utility when trying to understand the truth about the real world, and you need a predictive model. All right, they could actually deliver the goods, and in all cases, it is the scientific method. I mean, you could just look at the history and progress of the last few hundred years, or actually the last few centuries, the last 400 years. There have been many scientific gains. Flying a man to the moon, alleviating disease, creating ample food for people, communication, the internet, integrated chips. I mean, like, all of this stuff is a gift of scientific naturalism. Now, am I saying that we've uncovered the whole of the universe and we understand everything and we've encompassed all of nature in this, just this small bit of gray matter? I mean, of course not. But that's the test. That is the way of which we could actually understand the universe through gathering physical evidence and reason logic. That's not that we're not asserting that in every case we understand how nature did it, but through careful investigation and gathering of evidence and reasoning it out, we could actually get to some understanding of how that thing occurred and how we can describe it. I think that's a better method than saying God did it or some spirit did it or some mysterious ghost man in the sky actually did this thing. I mean, you could say that about like lightning bolts. Hundreds of years ago, people thought that lightning bolts were the case of deities or spirits, and there wasn't a naturalistic explanation to explain that, and they felt that they were justified in believing that. They were not justified. We ultimately found how lightning bolts work through electromagnetism in the atmosphere, and we don't believe in supernatural hypotheses for that anymore. Simple.
Nature that's ultimate, and some people say that it's an uncaused, transcendent, infinite God that caused everything that is ultimate. So basically, questions that I have for this type of person: can you prove that methodological naturalism is capable of finding all truth? That's what you're using to find all truth. How do you know it will find all truth? Can you prove philosophical naturalism to be true? what is your reason for saying that your reason is reasonable, whereas the other person's reasoning toward their faith is unreasonable? How do you know that your reason is reasonable? What makes you a person of reason? So go ahead, leave comments, make videos, whatever. I'm really...
Okay. Honestly, I mean, let's look at this. Truth is the degree to which a statement corresponds with reality, and reality is limited by our senses or what we could ascertain directly through reason. I think that the scientific method is the most reliable form of knowledge that we have about the universe, because it understands that in order for something to be true, it must be consistent, coherent, and predictable. So I think I'm justified in trusting science as a method because it constantly builds on knowledge and improves itself over time. I mean, for the last few millennia, religion has promised a second life, while in the scientific method, it has doubled your life in just a mere century. Religion promises, science delivers. So, I mean, I don't know what you mean by this ultimate truth. It gives me, like objective, factual truth, and so I'm good with that. I mean, if you have some evidence for this ultimate truth, or that your epistemology is reasonable because it has a lack of evidence and just is based on faith, authority, or revelation or something like that, I would love to see your evidence. But I'm more justified in trusting science because it backs up itself with physical evidence and actually improves itself based on tests, verification, multiple rationale criteria for data being measured, stuff like that. But with that, that's my video. This has been Wolf King. Peace out. If you like this video, you know what to do. Sape ahora y dare to know, and hail Satan. Later.